So here's a story that's interesting, and it's interesting for a couple of reasons. One, it's against Joe Rogan, who is public enemy number one right now. I say that. I still think he's public enemy number one, but I just heard that Dave Chappelle just got signed on for more Netflix specials, so he's back up there again as a public enemy because I know a lot of people are unhappy about that. But Joe Rogan's public enemy number one by the news media and Jim Psaki and whoever else. But the other reason that this is interesting to me is this website that I found it from is meaww.com. And they reference an article by The Sun, which we'll get to here in a minute too. And they're really about it other than just finding it on random other sites. This is not a story that's been running widespread. And I think it's very interesting, very telling. So we'll go through it and maybe you'll find it interesting too. Maybe you won't. That's fine. But I do think it's interesting to see how far things are getting for some folks. So it says Joe Rogan hires elite armed bodyguards for protection amid Spotify controversy. Might sound a little extreme, but we'll read into it and see what you think afterwards. Podcast Joe Rogan has now increased his security by hiring elite Marine SEALs amid the ongoing Spotify controversy. UFC commentator has hired an armed security team to protect him and his family. Rogan has been in the spotlight since his controversial remarks on COVID vaccination and posing as a frontier in the anti-vax campaign. I don't know if that's correctly worded there and accurate there. His podcasts were reportedly spreading anti-COVID agendas and fabricating the pandemic as a planned conspiracy, which had triggered many, including singers like Neil Young, who no one cares about. The exclusive report by The Sun revealed that an armed guard is stationed round the clock outside the Spotify podcaster's $14.4 million 8-bedroom home in Austin, Texas. The armed and dangerous guards are also said to be positioned inside the property, which is monitored by CCTV. It comes as Rogan's coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic and vaccines and his use of the N-word on the Joe Rogan Experience sparked furious reaction from his critics. Rogan, along with his wife and 2 kids, have recently relocated to their Austin home, where he also records his podcast nearly 2 years ago after leaving California. The sources claim that Rogan loves his family more than anything, and that was the sole reason for hiring a protection team. Joe Rogan runs an exclusive podcast on Spotify and has signed a hefty deal worth between $100 million and $200 million, yada, yada, yada. We know that. He came under fire recently. We know all that. It's just more of the same. Here we go. Rogan was brutally trolled and attacked on social media for running such anti-vax agendas, and his podcast was condemned by celebrities like Neil Young, who removed his music from Spotify after issuing an ultimatum to the platform to choose between him and Rogan. The move by Young, 76, was followed by singer-songwriter Joni Mitchell, 78, and other artists. Later, a video emerged that showed Joe Rogan using the N-word numerous times during his podcast, which he apologized for, but also described as a political hit job. And it was a political hit job. It was, again, it was on Tim Pool. It was either him or one of the other folks on there said there is a difference between saying a word and using a word. And I didn't really understand that until he went into a little bit more detail. But basically, he wasn't using the word to call somebody the N-word or to use it disparagingly in a conversation. He was saying the N-word as though he was quoting what someone else was saying, or quoting something from a song, or quoting something from a stand-up special. You know, this was not him. This was him saying the word without using it to be derogatory. I know that a lot of people aren't going to get that. And I didn't at first either. If you use the word to me. But at the same time, once I thought about it a little bit more and put it in that perspective, it made sense to me that there is a difference between that. Just like Papa John. He was saying in a conference call, from my understanding, for example, he was quoting something that somebody had said and the N-word was involved. And he was just quoting that person or quoting that song or quoting that artist or quoting whatever. Well, of course, he lost everything because of that. He wasn't using it. He was saying it as an example, like, hey, this is a word that we can't use. This is something we can't tolerate. And because he used it in that context, he said that word, he lost everything. So There's a very, very fine line there, and I get that. But I think we go to the extremes. And he was, as Tim says, he was saying it, not using it. But anyways, we'll look over here at the sun to see if there's anything else in here. It's more or less the same. Obviously, any crazy could turn up and try anything. He's got supporters as well as enemies, it's fair to say. Having a security team there is preemptive just in case things are returned to the worst. People come from all over the country to visit his house. Pretty wild. He doesn't want anything to ever get out of hand. There are guys inside the house as well. He gets high-profile people there, too, who also need protection because where he records a show, it's just better to be safe than sorry. There was... This whole thing was funny, too. I don't know. I mean, everybody covered it, I think, at some point. I know the quartering did. But, like, you can see all the color that's here. And you know, the sharpness, the color, and you know, contrast and everything there. And then when they showed this video clip on CNN and some other networks, they literally pulled back the saturation and tinted it toward green a little bit, and actually made his skin look more green and sickly and stuff, as he was talking about how he got COVID. It's manipulation like you wouldn't believe it. In fact, on this show 2 or 3 weeks ago, we showed the debate between Trump and Biden for president. And you can see the blue background between the two side by side, that there was something a little bit amiss. And it was on Trump's side, they had actually beefed up the saturation and warmed it up a little bit, where the blue background did not match the blue background from Biden. And the reason for that is they made his skin look more orange, which is something they've always picked about and always made fun about. And there's plenty of other times where they did that as well, where they amplified that to make it more comical and to make it just a subliminal thing they would do to attach that to them. So it's very, very subtle a lot of times, but they do that to manipulate you. Yes, they do. So you can go look all on that. And I don't see it on here, but I was wanting to find some examples. But there's already been threats, and I think it's terrible to see that. There've already been threats, like actual threats, like on the property and whatnot, that have come out there and thrown stuff, threatened lives or whatever. And so that's why, you know, one of the reasons why he's really upped his security. So for some reason, people hate him that much that they're out there willing to hurt him, his family, whatever. And it just takes a really, really low quality person to do stuff like that. It reminds me of, again, not the biggest Trump supporter. I have to keep saying that. I dig a lot of the stuff he did. I dislike a lot of the stuff that he did too. Okay. So you got to kind of take a little bit of this and that with it. But, you know, the MAGA hats, right? I saw more people being violent toward people wearing the MAGA hats than people wearing the MAGA hats being violent. There's so many clips out there of people who are knocking the hats off of people's heads, threatening people because they're wearing it. I know, I can't remember, Officer Tatum and some others, black guys wearing them or going to, you know, Republican rallies and whatnot, being called white supremacist and all kinds of stuff, even though they're black. And so it's just, there's a lot of hate that is coming from a particular side, it seems. And not that it doesn't come from both sides, it does. But right now, and over the last several years, good God, it has been super duper heavy on one side. And I'll just round out this entertainment segment here, I guess we'll call it, with a little bit of sad news. Since doing this podcast, I think we've lost Norm Macdonald, which I didn't even really cover because it really messed me up. But we lost Norm Macdonald, who is probably top 5 comedians. For me, I see top comedians for me are Richard Pryor, Robin Williams, and Dave Chappelle. Not exactly sure which order I'd put them in. I think Robin Williams is still always going to be my favorite, but Richard Pryor and Dave Chappelle. But those guys are my top 3, and I think Norm Macdonald and probably Mitch Hedberg are pretty neck and neck there for number 4, number 5. But one of the comedians I remember from years ago when I was younger, and I thought his way of telling jokes was just awesome, was the Amazing Jonathan. So I was saying, since we've been doing the podcast, we've lost Norm. That one really, really hurt. We lost Norm. We lost Bob Saget just recently. We just lost the amazing Jonathan. I know I'm forgetting someone, and I feel awful for it because I was just thinking about it earlier. But we have we've been losing some of these comedians, and what sucks is that several of these comedians you either grew up watching or having some kind of ties to, or you know, it's an industry that really is, and Joe Rogan's part of that industry. You know, it's an industry that is the last bastion of kind of free speech. And of course now it's being attacked, and it's sad to see. But yeah, this one sucked too. The amazing Jonathan, hate to see him go. I won't read the whole article here, but it was funny because he's a comedian, but he does like magic. But he's a comedian, so it's not really the greatest, most amazing magic you've ever seen. And there's twists and turns in it. I think they called him the Freddy Krueger of comedy, or the Freddy Krueger of magic. Is that in here somewhere? Because that was funny to me. Anyways, he was suffering with a heart condition for a while, and I want to say I saw somewhere that they've got a film coming out, kind of a documentary about him. So I'll be looking for that. I thought his take on comedy was unique and different, so I'm going to be checking that out. So I hate to end this segment on that low note, but if you've never seen The Amazing Jonathan, there's plenty of clips out there on YouTube and elsewhere. I highly recommend go checking them out. R.I.P. dude, you were great.
Hey guys, thanks for checking out this clip from the Morning Mayhem. Remember, this is just a portion of the full show that comes out every Friday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. If you hadn't already, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the full shows or these tasty little nuggets.